Dr. Eleanor Chen nearly spilled her coffee when the campus emergency sirens began wailing. The Harvard Xenolinguistics Department had been her sanctuary for the past 3 years, a place where theoretical first contact scenarios remained safely hypothetical. Until today. Her phone buzzed with emergency alerts as she rushed to the lecture hall, where a projector displayed CNN's frantic coverage. The skies over New York, Beijing, Moscow, and London shimmered with iridescent distortions, as though reality itself was being torn open. Students and faculty crowded around her, faces illuminated by the unnatural glow of their phones as social media exploded with amateur footage. "They're calling it The Arrival," whispered her research assistant, eyes never leaving the screen. The distortions stabilized into massive vessels, unlike anything human engineering could conceive. Organic curves blended with crystalline structures that seemed to phase in and out of visibility. 7 distinct fleet formations, each with unique configurations, held position in perfect geometric arrangement around Earth. Military responses came swiftly and futilely. Fighter jets scrambled worldwide, disappeared in silent flashes of light. Missile launches terminated mid-trajectory, warheads neutralized without detonation. The planet's most sophisticated defense systems might as well have been children throwing stones. 43 minutes after the first appearance, every digital screen on Earth, phones, computers, televisions, billboards, simultaneously displayed the same feed. A being with an insectoid carapace and compound eyes that reflected rainbows of color. Its mandibles clicked in patterns that preceded perfect, unaccented English. "People of Earth, I am Commander Zex Toral of the Vesperian Hegemony, speaking on behalf of the Galactic Coalition. We extend greetings and assurances of safety during this transition period. Your world now falls under our protection and guidance. This intervention is necessary for both your development and the greater stability of this sector. Please comply with all directives from Coalition representatives. Resistance will necessitate corrective measures, but cooperation will be rewarded. We come not as conquerors, but as shepherds." Eleanor felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. She'd spent her career studying communication patterns across human cultures, looking for universals that might help decode alien language if contact ever came. Now, staring at the mantis-like being, she recognized something no one else would: subtle mandible movements that contradicted the confident broadcast message. In human terms, micro-expressions of anxiety. These beings, with technology advanced enough to neutralize Earth's military might without effort, were afraid. 3,000 miles away, James Harper watched the same broadcast from his cabin in Montana's Bitterroot Mountains. The former Force Recon Marine had chosen isolation after his last deployment, building a self-sufficient homestead where he could keep his nightmares at bay. Now, the world was bringing new nightmares to his doorstep. Unlike civilians panicking in cities, Harper observed the alien formations with professional assessment. Their positioning maximized coverage while minimizing resource commitment, classic containment strategy. But the pattern had gaps, particularly over oceanic regions and certain mountain ranges. Either sloppy tactical planning, which seemed unlikely, or "They're looking for something," he muttered, marking locations on his topographical map. "And they're in a hurry." When alien shuttles began atmospheric descent 2 hours later, they targeted locations that confirmed Harper's suspicion. Major population centers, yes, but also remote sites corresponding to ancient monuments, geological anomalies, and electromagnetic irregularities that Harper had marked in his research of off-grid living locations. As darkness fell over Montana, Harper began packing essential gear. Whatever these aliens wanted, their protection story was diplomatic cover. He'd seen enough military occupations to recognize the signs. This was a resource extraction operation with a timetable. In Cambridge, Dr. Chen downloaded every alien communication sample she could find before the inevitable information blackout began. The contradiction between their words and nonverbal cues nagged at her training. The Coalition had overwhelming technological superiority, so what could possibly make them afraid of humans? The answer, she suspected, wasn't about humanity at all. Something about Earth itself terrified them. Lieutenant Creix adjusted his atmospheric filters as he stepped into Burlington's makeshift community center. 3 weeks into the occupation, humans still produced stress pheromones that irritated his respiratory system. Unlike his fellow Vesperians, he found the scent fascinating rather than repulsive. The power grid must be restored by tomorrow, he announced to the gathered human leaders. Coalition protocols recommend example setting for non-compliance. Town Council President Diane Mercer met his compound gaze without flinching. Your protocols suggest executing hostages. Is that your intention, Lieutenant? Creix surprised them by settling into a chair designed for human proportions, his exoskeletal frame clicking awkwardly against the plastic. My species evolved as hive builders, Ms. Mercer. We understand community infrastructure. Your resistance members cut power to disrupt our communications, not to harm civilians. I propose a compromise. Restore power voluntarily, and I provide medical supplies from our stockpile. The humans exchanged glances. This wasn't the inflexible oppression they'd experienced from other coalition officers. Why are you different? Mercer asked. Creix's mandibles clicked softly, the Vesperian equivalent of a contemplative sigh. Before joining military service, I specialized in xenocultural studies. Your species creates art. He pronounced the word with reverent difficulty. Impractical objects of beauty. Music without informational purpose. In my culture, such behaviors indicate neural dysfunction. Yet you build civilizations upon them. Later, alone in his quarters, Creix added to his unauthorized research file. Human adaptability continues to exceed coalition models. They organize effectively under pressure. Most concerning, they exhibit intuitive pattern recognition superior to our predictive algorithms. James Harper watched through his scope as the alien patrol passed beneath his position. The 4-soldier squad followed the same route they'd used twice before, a tactical error his old commanders would never have permitted. Predictable, he whispered to the 5 resistance fighters lying beside him in the Montana undergrowth. 3, 2, 1. The improvised explosive device detonated precisely as the aliens reached the bend in the road. Not close enough to kill with shrapnel, but perfectly positioned to disable their transport and communication equipment with the electromagnetic pulse. Harper was already moving, his team executing the ambush with practiced precision. 12 seconds later, 3 aliens lay unconscious from tranquilizer rounds specially calibrated to their biology. The 4th, separated from its unit, fled into the forest. Let it run, Harper ordered when a resistance fighter raised her rifle. I want them to see the pattern but not understand it. Back at their hidden camp, Harper supervised as they stripped the alien technology for analysis. Their greatest prize, a universal translator and communication hub containing encrypted coalition transmissions. We need someone who can make sense of this, said Maria Delgado, a former cybersecurity specialist. Military intelligence. Harper shook his head. They're compromised. Coalition-targeted command structures first. He hesitated before adding, I might know someone. Academic type, but with clearance. If she survived the initial purge. Dr. Eleanor Chen worked by flashlight in Harvard's subbasement archives, surrounded by linguistics reference materials and a smuggled laptop. The coalition had immediately restricted academic research, confirming her suspicion that knowledge was dangerous to their agenda. She'd spent 3 weeks analyzing their communication patterns, cataloging inconsistencies between verbal content and nonverbal signaling. The coalition species each exhibited their own tells. Vesperians clicked their mandibles rapidly when discussing Earth's geological features. The luminous ethery dimmed perceptibly when certain geographic coordinates were mentioned. A pattern was emerging across all 7 species, controlled fear when referencing something called the anomaly. The basement door creaked. Chen froze, then relaxed slightly when a human figure appeared. Dr. Chen, Colonel Richard sent me. We need your expertise. The messenger handed her a satellite phone. Someone's acquired coalition communications technology. They need a linguist with your background. Chen scrolled through the encrypted message, her eyes widening at the final line. Asterisk, tell her it's about the thing they're afraid of. The thing they're looking for, asterisk. When do we leave? She asked, already packing her notes. Now. They've begun drilling operations at 7 sites worldwide. Whatever they're after, they're accelerating the timeline. Compass doesn't work. Again. Maria tapped the useless instrument against her palm as Harper's resistance team navigated through dense forest toward the coalition outpost. 5 miles back, they had crossed an invisible line where electronics began failing in unpredictable patterns. Harper had switched to old-school navigation. Stars, landmarks, and instinct. 3rd dead zone we found this week, Harper noted, marking it on his paper map. All within 50 miles of their drilling sites. The team froze at the sound of coalition hover transports approaching. Too late to retreat, they scattered for cover among the trees. Harper signaled for silence as searchlights swept overhead, illuminating the forest floor in patches of harsh blue-white light. Movement sensors deployed, whispered Rodriguez, their tech specialist. Standard pattern. We got made. The forest erupted with weapon fire. Coalition soldiers materialized through camouflage tech that bent light around their forms. They'd been waiting in ambush. Fall back, Harper shouted as stunner rounds crackled through the air. 2 resistance fighters dropped immediately. Maria took a hit to the shoulder, but kept moving. Harper provided covering fire, his modified rifle sending coalition troops scrambling for cover. The advantage was temporary. More alien soldiers converged from multiple directions, their tactical positioning blocking all escape routes. Harper found himself cornered against a rock formation, down to his last magazine. Maria lay wounded beside him, Rodriguez nowhere to be seen. Surrender now, humans, came the amplified voice of a coalition commander. Your neural patterns have been logged. Resistance is. Stand down. A different voice cut through the chaos. A Vesperian officer stepped into the clearing, mandibles clicking rapidly in what Harper recognized as agitation. These subjects are classified research assets. Command authorization, Cryx Delta 7. Harper stared in disbelief as the coalition forces hesitated, then lowered their weapons. The Vesperian officer, Lieutenant Cryx, Harper realized, approached slowly. You have precisely 2 minutes before my override is questioned. Cryx said quietly, take your wounded and head southwest. There's a river crossing unwashed due to equipment malfunctions. Why? Harper demanded, still aiming his weapon. Cryx produced a data crystal. Because they're lying to everyone, my people included. He placed it deliberately on the ground. Evidence of coalition operations at Nexus sites. Unexplained phenomena. Personnel. Disappearances. A distant alarm sounded. Cryx straightened. Go. Now. Dr. Chen adjusted her stolen coalition identity badge as she followed Dr. Yasmin Rahman through the secure research facility. Her former colleague had taken an enormous risk arranging this meeting with the alien scientist. Remember, you're my research assistant, Rahman whispered. Speak only when addressed directly. The Aetheri are the most sympathetic species, but still dangerous. The laboratory door dilated open, revealing a being composed of undulating light contained within a translucent exoskeleton. Miralan, senior dimensional mathematician for the Coalition, turned her luminous attention toward them. Dr. Rahman, you brought company. The Aetheri's voice resonated directly in their minds rather than disturbing air. My assistant, for data recording. Rahman managed to keep her voice steady. Miralan's glow shifted to a questioning blue. Curious, I don't recall authorizing additional human personnel. Chen stepped forward before Rahman could respond. I specialized in multidimensional linguistics at MIT before the occupation. Dr. Rahman thought I might help translate some conceptual frameworks between our species. A calculated risk, but it worked. Miralan's color brightened with academic interest. Multidimensional linguistics. Your species barely acknowledges dimensions beyond 4, much less develops language frameworks for them. Theory outpaces practical observation, Chen replied. We've conceptualized dimensional membranes mathematically for decades. The aethery hovered closer. Perhaps you might help resolve a translation difficulty. We've been analyzing Earth's dimensional topology and encountering linguistic barriers. Chen seized the opening. The fault line measurements. Miralan dimmed momentarily. Surprise. You know of these. Theoretical models only, Chen improvised. Earth sits at unusual dimensional coordinates, doesn't it? Unusual. Miralan's light pulsed with what might have been amusement or disbelief. Earth exists at the intersection of 7 primary dimensional fault lines. No planet should sustain stable existence at even one such intersection. The probability approaches mathematical impossibility. Chen struggled to maintain her composure at this revelation. And these drilling operations, they're related to these fault lines. Miralan dimmed rapidly to warning crimson. Who are you really? Security clearance Schuland. Alarms blared throughout the facility. Miralan's form flickered with distress. Nexus point activity detected. Antarctica breach has triggered resonance cascades. All 7 points are synchronizing. The aethery's attention fixed on Chen with sudden recognition. You're not here by accident. You feel them, don't you? The dimensional harmonics. They're calling to you. Before Chen could respond, the laboratory lights failed. In the emergency illumination that followed, Miralan's body glowed with intense purpose. Run, the alien scientist projected directly into Chen's mind. When the Guardians awaken, the Coalition will destroy everything to contain them. The video footage on Creix's data crystal displayed Coalition scientists screaming as they were twisted inside out, their bodies briefly occupying impossible geometries before collapsing into themselves. The recording abruptly ended, but not before capturing a crystalline formation growing from the Antarctic ice, where their dimensional drill had penetrated over 2 miles deep. Harper, Chen, and 5 resistance members watched in horrified silence from their makeshift headquarters in an abandoned Chicago subway maintenance tunnel. 314 Coalition personnel lost in the initial breach, Creix explained, his mandibles clicking softly. The official report claims equipment malfunction, but I obtained this from a Trilaxian technician before they silenced him. What the hell were they drilling for? Harper asked. Chen replayed one segment, freezing the frame on the crystalline growth. Not what. Where. They breached a nexus point, a location where dimensional fault lines intersect. She turned to Creix. How many other drilling operations are active? 6. All accelerated after the Antarctic incident. Commander Zex Toral claims they're stabilizing dangerous anomalies, but they're extracting something. Energy readings are unprecedented. Chen's hands trembled as she overlaid the drilling locations on a global map. The locations correspond to ancient monuments. Stonehenge, Göbekli Tepe, Uluru. And this, Harper said, pointing to a location in the Carpathian Mountains. It's the closest active site. 3 days' travel through occupied territory. Chen studied the mountain coordinates. There's no famous monument there. Not that survived. Creix interjected. Coalition archaeologists discovered foundation remnants dating back 20,000 years. They were already drilling before the occupation officially began. A decision crystallized in the tense silence. We need to see a nexus point for ourselves, Harper said, before they breach another one. The journey through occupied Europe was a gauntlet of coalition checkpoints, drone surveillance, and strange environmental distortions. Twice they encountered dead zones where all technology failed. Once, they witnessed a flock of birds flying in geometric patterns impossible for natural flocking behavior. More disturbing were the dreams. Each night, every member of their team reported identical visions. Crystalline beings emerging from stone, reaching with faceted limbs toward sleepers. On the 7th day, as they approached the Carpathian site, they discovered coalition forces in disarray. Alien soldiers exhibited signs of psychological breakdown, staring cavatonically, removing breathing apparatus, or firing at shadows. Their neural mappings aren't designed for dimensional bleed-through. Cryx explained as they observed from distance. My species is more resistant, but even I feel pressure, like something vast is watching us. They made their approach at sunset, using the Coalition's own confusion as cover. The drilling facility perched on a mountainside clearing where ancient foundation stones formed perfect right angles despite millennia of weathering. The drill is nearly 2 miles down, Cryx whispered, checking readings on a stolen monitor. Dimensional harmonics are spiking. They'll breach within hours. Chen walked toward the foundation stones, as if in a trance. When Harper moved to stop her, she held up a hand. I can hear it, she said quietly, like music just below audible range. As her fingers touched the ancient stone, the air above the foundation shimmered. Reality folded, colors inverted, and something impossible materialized. The guardian entity existed as a geometric shape that somehow contained more dimensions than human eyes could process. Edges flowed into angles that shouldn't connect, creating a form that hurt to look at directly. It hovered, pulsing with light that cast no shadows. Cryx fell to his knees, mandibles clicking in rapid distress patterns. Harper raised his weapon instinctively, then slowly lowered it, overcome by a sense of profound recognition. The entity projected no sound, yet they all heard, felt, its communication. We AAV Celi P2 wo FIL Uguryu. The engineers CDD this ni XUS with primitive forms. UEVOVAs intended. Dimensional custodians. A2 human E. 2 VEWEAV asterisk. Images flooded their minds. Earth forming at precise dimensional coordinates, deliberately engineered by beings of pure geometry. Early life seated in patterns that would eventually yield consciousness capable of perceiving dimensional layers. Humanity evolving not through random mutation, but guided adaptation to Earth's unique dimensional environment. Asterisk. The NTURLOPURs seek to harvest what they can not UEVNDURSTND. They damaged their Obuian NEXUS worlds. They FEAR wovocate as SLEEPs beneath TE dimensional VILS asterisk. A final vision struck them with stunning clarity. Humans weren't just Earth's dominant species. They were part of its dimensional immune system, evolved specifically to protect the nexus points that stabilized reality itself. Before they could process these revelations, Coalition energy weapons shattered the night. The guardian entity flickered as weapons fire passed harmlessly through its form. Behind them, alien dropships descended, deploying combat units in assault formation. They've detected the dimensional surge, Cryx warned. Primary containment protocol is scorched earth. Harper readied his weapon, but something had changed. He could perceive faint trails in the air, probability paths showing where Coalition soldiers would move seconds before they appeared. Beside him, Chen's eyes reflected crystalline patterns as she whispered, "We need to reach the drill. The Guardian has awakened something inside us, something that was always there." Coalition energy weapons created a lattice of deadly light across the mountainside. Harper moved with impossible speed, anticipating each shot seconds before it was fired. He pulled Chen behind a stone outcropping as superheated plasma scorched the ground where they'd stood. "I can see their attack patterns before they execute them," he gasped, like combat intuition on steroids. Chen's eyes glimmered with crystalline reflections that weren't there moments before. The Guardian awakened abilities that were dormant in us. Humans evolved in Earth's dimensional soup. We've always had the capacity to perceive beyond normal limits. Cryx pointed toward the drilling platform, where Coalition forces were accelerating the operation. They're overriding safety protocols. The breach will be catastrophic if they puncture the nexus point without stabilizers. A Vesperian command ship hovered above the site, its dimensional dampeners creating visible distortion fields in the air. From its underside emerged a figure Harper recognized from broadcasts. Commander Zex Toral, his iridescent carapace gleaming with ceremonial markings. "He never appears in person," Kriex whispered. "This nexus point must be crucial to their plans." Chen's attention remained fixed on the guardian entity, which had retreated to a spectrum almost beyond perception. "It's showing me something about the nexus network. The 7 points form a planetary circuit. Breach one incorrectly, and the dimensional feedback affects them all." Weapon fire intensified as coalition forces detected their position. Harper grabbed a fallen alien rifle, somehow knowing exactly how to reconfigure its settings without training. "I'll create a diversion," he said. "You two reach the drill controls." "Impossible," Kriex objected. "Security is layered specifically to prevent." "I can do it," Chen interrupted, her voice resonating with harmonic overtones. "I can see the dimensional locks now. They're just patterns." Before they could move, the mountain beneath them trembled. The coalition drill had reached its critical depth. A column of light erupted from the platform, not directed upward but inward, as if folding into a dimension perpendicular to normal space. Commander Zex Toral's amplified voice echoed across the valley. "Stabilize the extraction field. The nexus energy must be contained." The light column pulsed, then collapsed into a sphere of warped space, where colors inverted and solid matter became transparent. Coalition scientists frantically adjusted equipment around the phenomenon, but their movements grew increasingly erratic. One by one, they began clawing at their protective gear, eyes wide with terror at something only they could see. "Dimensional bleed-through," Kriex explained. "Their minds are perceiving realities they weren't evolved to process." The mountain shuddered again. Cracks spread through the ancient foundation stones, glowing with interior light. From these fissures emerged crystalline growths identical to those seen in the Antarctic footage. Harper felt no fear as he watched the crystals form complex geometric patterns that somehow communicated meaning directly to his consciousness. Instead, he experienced profound recognition, like remembering something long forgotten. Throughout the valley, coalition forces began retreating in panic as more guardian entities materialized, some from stone, others from thin air as dimensional barriers weakened. Commander Zex Toral screamed orders that went unheeded as his troops fled. Chen stepped forward into the open, ignoring weapons fire that seemed to curve around her. "They're not attacking," she called out. "They're stabilizing the breach. The Guardians are Earth's immune response." The crystalline entities converged around the dimensional drill, their forms weaving through each other in impossible patterns. The extraction sphere collapsed in on itself, energy flowing into the Guardian network rather than coalition containment fields. Zex Toral's command ship powered up weapons designed to destroy the entire mountainside. "Dimensional containment protocol authorized," he shrieked. "Sterilize the entire site." Something shifted in the air, a ripple of potentiality. Harper found himself moving without conscious decision, his body responding to dimensional insights beyond rational thought. He sprinted toward the command ship, each step landing precisely where coalition defenses weren't. Chen's voice reached him telepathically. "Asterisk. The Guardian network is activating globally. Humans everywhere are beginning to awaken. But we need time asterisk." As Harper reached the platform beneath the command ship, he locked eyes with Commander Zex Toral. The Vesperian commander's compound eyes widened in shock, not at Harper's presence, but at what he saw reflected in the human's now crystalline gaze. Recognition of what the coalition had awoken, and the terrible understanding that they were not the hunters here. They were the trespassers in a temple built before stars burned. News of the Carpathian incident spread through coalition ranks like dimensional wildfire. Remote viewing feeds had captured enough before transmission blackout. A human moving through security fields designed to stop anything with mass. Crystalline entities emerging from solid rock. Commander Zex Toral's flagship retreating in disarray. The coalition armada in Earth orbit fractured along ideological lines. 3 species, led by the Aetheri, broke formation, their ships clustering at equidistant points around the planet. An ancient philosophical schism has resurfaced, Crayx explained as their stolen shuttle approached the Brazilian nexus point. The Aetheri have always maintained that dimensional manipulation violated cosmic law. They joined the coalition only to prevent worse exploitation. Harper piloted with intuitive precision, navigating atmospheric disturbances that would have overwhelmed conventional reflexes. His crystalline flecked eyes tracked probability paths through the storm. "Why help us now?" Chen asked. The shuttle interior reflected fractals in her irises as her perception shifted between dimensional layers. "Because the Guardian's awakening proves their creation myths," Crayx replied. "The Aetheri believe universe engineers seeded dimensional nexuses to evolve conscious guardians. Humans are living confirmation of their most sacred texts." Below them, the Amazon rainforest canopy parted to reveal a massive coalition installation surrounding an ancient stepped pyramid reclaimed from jungle growth. Unlike previous sites, this facility bristled with new equipment rushed from orbit, including a massive device at its center. "Dimensional destabilizer," Crayx said grimly. "Designed to sever connections between dimensions. If activated at a nexus point, it would cut Earth off from the dimensional network," Chen finished, "isolating the Guardians. And potentially unraveling reality itself," added Harper. "We need to disable it before they power up." Their stolen identification codes granted landing clearance, but security would detect the discrepancy within minutes. As they touched down on a peripheral pad, alarms already began to sound. Inside the facility, coalition forces moved with desperate precision. The destabilizer's activation sequence had begun, energy coils charging with ominous blue light. Manning the controls was a luminous Aetheri scientist Harper recognized from Chen's description. "Miralan," Chen whispered. "She helped me before. Why is she activating a weapon that violates her own beliefs?" Through the reinforced observation windows, they watched coalition guards surrounding the Aetheri scientist, weapons trained on her glowing form. Her movements were deliberate but rigid, cooperation under duress. "We need a distraction," Harper said, eyeing the facility's power distribution nodes. Before they could act, space itself seemed to fold inward near the pyramid's apex. A massive guardian entity materialized, larger and more complex than any they'd encountered. Its crystalline structure pulsed with internal light that shifted through colors beyond human visual range. Coalition forces responded with coordinated fire, energy weapons converging on the entity. The Guardian neither retreated nor attacked. Instead, it extended geometric appendages toward the destabilizer, attempting to disrupt its activation sequence. "It's trying to neutralize the weapon, not destroy it," Chen realized. "The Guardians aren't aggressive, they're protective." Zextoral's voice echoed through the facility. "Full power to the destabilizer. Cut them off from their dimensional source." The weapon's hum built toward critical resonance. Energy tendrils lashed out, catching the Guardian in a web of anti-dimensional force. The crystalline being's structure began to fracture, its light dimming. Miralan's voice cut through the chaos, not spoken but projected telepathically to any minds receptive enough to hear. Asterisk, the destabilizer will create catastrophic dimensional collapse. All 7 nexus points will destabilize simultaneously. Reality itself will unravel. Asterisk. Chen felt the Aetheri's consciousness brush against hers, sharing understanding without words. Miralan had sabotaged the weapon's containment systems. When it reached full power, the destabilizer's energy would feed back into itself. Asterisk, I can redirect the dimensional current. Asterisk, Miralan projected. Asterisk, but the cost is transformation. My consciousness will disperse across the dimensional layers. Asterisk. Harper saw it unfold through probability pathways. Miralan would sacrifice her corporal form to save both Earth and the Guardians. Among her people, such dissolution wasn't death but transcendence, yet one forced before her natural time. With security forces converging on their position, Crayx made his choice. The Vesperian officer stepped into the open, mandibles clicking a formal challenge pattern that commanded attention from all Coalition soldiers. "I invoke the testimony of witness," he announced in the Coalition's common language. "What transpires here violates the compact of 7 worlds." As Coalition troops hesitated at this formal invocation of their highest law, Harper and Chen slipped past toward the destabilizer controls. They reached Miralan as the weapon reached 90% charge. "There must be another way," Chen pleaded. The Aethery's light pulsed with sorrowful determination. There isn't. But through this sacrifice, truth spreads. The Coalition will finally understand what they've done. What humanity truly is. The destabilizer reached full charge. Miralan's form expanded suddenly, engulfing the weapon's core. Her consciousness touched theirs one final time. Tell them. "We were never meant to be the Guardians. We were meant to be the students." Light erupted from the destabilizer, but instead of the destructive pulse Zextoral had intended, the energy curved inward, contained within Miralan's dispersing form. Her physical body dissolved into pure dimensional energy that flowed into the nexus point, strengthening rather than severing its connections. Where the destabilizer had stood, a new crystalline formation grew, one that incorporated parts of Coalition technology into its structure. The Guardian entity, now freed, manifested smaller versions of itself throughout the facility. Coalition troops found themselves trapped in bubbles of altered reality where they faced not destruction, but revelation, each forced to witness the truth about Earth's nature and humanity's role. Harper helped Chen to her feet as reality stabilized around them. Through the facility windows, they could see crystalline structures emerging from the jungle floor, forming patterns that mirrored the stars above. "Miralan knew," Chen said softly. "The Aethery always knew what humanity was meant to be." Krayik's approach, his exoskeleton now reflecting prismatic light in patterns that matched the Guardian crystals. "The dimensional awakening spreads," he said. "Humans worldwide are manifesting abilities as Nexus energy flows through the planetary network." And the Coalition. He looked at the stunned alien troops. "They're beginning to understand what they've done. What you are." Over the communication system, reports flooded in from all 7 nexus points. Guardian entities emerging, Coalition technology being transformed rather than destroyed, and humans everywhere connecting to Earth's dimensional network. The message was becoming clear to the Coalition forces who had arrived as conquerors. They had not invaded a primitive world. They had desecrated a sanctuary older than their civilizations. The stolen Coalition transport sailed through turbulent skies above the Australian outback. Dimensional fluctuations rippled visibly through the atmosphere. Auroras at impossible latitudes, gravity waves that compressed light into visible ripples, time eddies where clouds moved backward before resuming normal flow. All 6 nexus points are active now, Krayik reported, monitoring the dimensional scanner he'd reconfigured to track Guardian activity. But the 7th remains dormant. Chen studied the holographic display showing Uluru, the massive red sandstone formation rising from the desert floor. Coalition forces had established their primary command center there, fortifying the site with technology designed to suppress dimensional energies. "Why is Zextoral so fixated on the 7th point?" Harper asked, his crystalline flecked eyes tracking probability paths that shifted like heat mirages. "Because it's the keystone," Chen replied, her voice resonating with harmonic undertones she could no longer fully suppress. "The other 6 form a network, but the 7th stabilizes them all. With it, he could theoretically control Earth's entire dimensional field, or extract enough energy to escape the consequences of destroying it." Krayik added grimly, "My species has witnessed this before. We're not native to our current homeworld." Harper and Chen turned to him in surprise. "The Vesperians once evolved on a dimensional nexus world," Krayik continued, mandibles clicking in solemn rhythms. "Our ancestors harvested its energies until the planetary fabric collapsed. The survivors fled through dimensional rifts, eventually settling a new world. Our recorded history begins with this exile, but the guilt remains encoded in our genetic memory. Chen's eyes widened with sudden understanding. That's why Zextoril seems almost obsessed. He's driven by species memory, trying to reclaim what your ancestors lost. And why some coalition species broke away, Harper added. They recognized the pattern. Their transport shuddered as it entered a severe dimensional disturbance zone surrounding Uluru. Below them, the landscape rippled with crystalline formations erupting from the red soil, guardian entities manifesting in increasing numbers as Earth's dimensional immune system mobilized. Coalition defenses engaged immediately, energy weapons lancing upward. Harper banked sharply, his enhanced reflexes allowing maneuvers that would shear apart conventional aircraft. They crash-landed 2 miles from the coalition perimeter, the transport half-phasing through solid ground before settling. We need to reach the drill site before Zextoril activates the primary extractor, Kriek said as they salvaged equipment from the wreckage. The Guardian network is diverting energy to stabilize the other 6 points. This one remains vulnerable. They moved toward Uluru through shifting dimensional pockets where reality behaved according to different rules. In one area, gravity pulled sideways. In another, they aged backwards momentarily before temporal flow normalized. Harper navigated these hazards instinctively, sensing stable paths between dimensional anomalies. The Guardians are creating these disturbances deliberately, Chen observed. They're trying to slow the Coalition's progress without harming them. As they crested a ridge, Uluru came into full view, but not as it appeared in tourist photographs. The massive formation pulsed with interior light that leaked through millions of tiny fissures in the stone. Coalition forces had constructed a massive drilling apparatus that plunged directly into the rock face, surrounded by dimensional dampening fields. At the center of the installation stood Commander Zextoril, his carapace adorned with ceremonial circuitry that connected directly to the extraction equipment. Around him, Coalition scientists worked frantically to complete the connections. He's wired himself into the extractor, Kriek whispered in horror. He intends to channel the Nexus energy through his own nervous system. Why would he risk that? Harper asked. Because if he succeeds, he'll ascend, Chen said, the dimensional knowledge flowing through her consciousness. He'll become like the Guardians, a being of pure dimensional energy, able to exist across multiple realities simultaneously. Or he'll tear the Nexus apart trying, Kriek added. They formulated a desperate plan. Harper would use his combat precognition to penetrate the perimeter defenses. Kriek would disable the dampening fields. Shen would attempt to awaken the dormant Guardian entities within Uluru itself. As they prepared to move, Chen suddenly gasped, her eyes glowing with intensifying crystalline patterns. Her consciousness expanded beyond linear time, past and potential futures appearing simultaneously. She saw Earth's formation at precisely calculated dimensional coordinates, its evolution carefully engineered, the slow development of life forms increasingly attuned to dimensional energies. Most overwhelming was the revelation of humanity's true purpose, not as Earth's dominant species or random evolutionary accident, but as conscious caretakers evolved specifically to perceive and protect the cosmic tapestry upon which reality depended. I understand now, she whispered as awareness flooded her being. The Guardians aren't separate entities. They're manifestations of Earth's dimensional immune system. And humans, we evolved as their partners. They're sensory organs in physical space. The knowledge cascaded through her, impossible to contain. On pure instinct, she established a telepathic link with every awakened human worldwide, momentarily connecting their consciousnesses. Through this improvised network, she shared the complete truth of Earth's nature and humanity's role, not as conquerors or victims, but as dimensional custodians evolved over millennia for precisely this moment. As Zextoril activated the primary extractor, the collective human consciousness responded. Across the planet, millions simultaneously directed their awakening abilities toward Uluru, their shared purpose creating a dimensional resonance that even the Coalition's dampening fields couldn't suppress. At the extraction site, Commander Zextoral's compound eyes widened as the drill pierced the seventh nexus point. And something unexpected answered. The seventh nexus point awakened. Unlike the violent eruptions at previous sites, Uluru's response began as a harmonic vibration that resonated at frequencies both above and below conventional matter. The massive formation glowed from within, its red sandstone becoming translucent as dimensional energies flowed through ancient pathways engineered into Earth's very structure. Commander Zextoral screamed, not in pain but ecstasy, as Nexus energy surged through the circuitry embedded in his carapace. His form began to shimmer, partially phasing between dimensional states. Around him, Coalition scientists backed away in terror as their commander's exoskeleton cracked, revealing crystalline growths beneath. "He's trying to force ascension," Krayek said in horror. "Without proper attunement, the dimensional energy will tear him apart, and possibly the Nexus with him." Harper moved with impossible speed, weaving through Coalition defenses that seemed to operate in slow motion from his perspective. Energy weapons discharged around him, but his crystalline-enhanced perception revealed safe pathways between each blast. He reached the extraction platform, just as the dimensional energies surrounding Zextoral intensified. "You're too late, human." The commander's voice resonated across multiple frequencies simultaneously. "I have what my ancestors lost. I will become like the Guardians." Chen's consciousness, still connected to the worldwide network of awakened humans, perceived the danger. Zextoral wasn't merely tapping the Nexus energy. He was attempting to siphon it, to consume what wasn't meant to be possessed but shared. Across the planet, humans temporarily merged with nearby Guardian entities, becoming living conduits for Earth's dimensional energies. These hybrid beings manifested abilities that defied conventional physics, walking through solid matter, perceiving future probabilities, manipulating local gravitational fields, and in some cases, briefly stepping outside time itself. In orbit, Coalition ships found themselves enveloped in crystalline structures that simply relocated them to the edge of the solar system, removed from the conflict without destruction. At Uluru, the sandstone dissolved into pure dimensional energy, revealing the true nature of the seventh nexus point. Not a physical location, but a dimensional intersection, a cosmic crossroads where realities converge. At its center hovered a crystalline structure of impossible complexity, the primary guardian entity, Earth's dimensional core consciousness. Harper had reached Zextoral, but found his weapons useless against the commander's partially ascended form. Instead, acting on instinct deeper than thought, Harper placed his hands on the extraction equipment. His crystalline-flecked eyes met Zextoral's compound gaze. "See what you've awakened," Harper said quietly. Through their connected consciousness, Chen directed the collective human awareness into Harper, making him a conduit for humanity's understanding of Earth's true nature. This awareness flowed through Harper into the extraction equipment and into Zextoral himself. The commander's mind, evolved from species that had once shared a similar dimensional heritage, couldn't resist the flood of perspective. In an instant, Zextoral experienced Earth's entire history, its careful engineering as a dimensional sanctuary, the deliberate evolution of humans as custodians, and the tragic parallel to his own species' lost homeworld. Zextoral saw the pattern complete itself. His ancestors had destroyed their dimensional nexus world through ignorance and greed. Now he had nearly repeated their mistake, coming to Earth not as a student but as a conqueror. The revelation shattered his sanity but opened his consciousness. The circuitry in his carapace overloaded, and his physical form collapsed. What remained of Zextoral's awareness dispersed into the dimensional currents, joining the cosmic flow he had sought to control. The extraction equipment, deprived of its controller, began a catastrophic overload. Krayek rushed to the controls, his engineering knowledge allowing him to initiate an emergency shutdown. As the machine powered down, the dimensional energies stabilized, flowing back into natural patterns. In the aftermath, the remaining coalition forces surrendered unconditionally. Earth was recognized not as a planet to be conquered, but as a cosmic sanctuary predating all their civilizations. The peaceful coalition species were permitted limited presence for cultural exchange and healing of their own dimensional damage. Critics, alongside other alien defectors, chose to remain on Earth as diplomatic liaisons. Many found themselves developing crystalline patterns similar to those in awakened humans, their proximity to Earth's dimensional fields triggering latent abilities in species with compatible nervous systems. Dr. Chen, permanently transformed by her dimensional awakening, established an academy to help humanity understand and develop their custodial abilities. The guardian entities, no longer hidden, formed symbiotic relationships with willing humans, creating a new class of dimensional stewards who could perceive and maintain Earth's cosmic connections. 1 month after the Uluru incident, Harper sat with Creox on a hilltop overlooking a valley where crystalline structures had begun growing in harmonious patterns with Earth's existing ecosystems. In the distance, the lights of departing coalition ships twinkled as they prepared for the journey home, forever changed by their encounter with Earth. They came looking for resources, Harper said, his crystalline eyes reflecting the stars above, but found a temple. Creox's compound eyes captured the flowing rivers of dimensional energy now visible in the night sky, the cosmic web that connected all living things on the planet. No, the Vesperian replied softly. They came looking for salvation and found their gods. Around them, guardian entities manifested briefly, acknowledging the truth in his words. Humanity had awakened to its cosmic purpose, not as Earth's conquerors, but as custodians of a sanctuary older than civilization itself. The moment every alien realized, they were not the invaders here. They were the uninvited guests in humanity's dimensional home.